Good morning, everyone. So, let's get into it because it's absolutely freezing and I'm trying my best to get on my gloves because that's how cold it is in this damn country. I have no idea how my ancestors survived. They must have been some tough fucking people. Anywho, let's talk about specifications and let's talk about something that I am so bad at that actually I think that it probably is the most common thing that I do wrong on almost a daily basis. I mean, it happens all the time, and it is because of a habit that I at least have developed, and you may develop this habit as well. And here I am going to hopefully tell you a small story about what I'm talking about, and at the same time give you advice that I myself can't really. I'm trying my best to start following my own advice, but this is the sort of thing like where you kind of just have to do what I say, not what I do. So what am I talking about? Well, I'm talking about not properly reading the specification for when you start working. Now this started back in school. It actually is funny because I come back to my teacher again, a man that, of course I respected him back in those days as well, but I have an even greater respect for these subtle little things that he kind of just forced me and my classmates through and I didn't think about it at the time, but now I kind of realized that he was actually right. One of the things he would do was, or rather he would state to me, he said, "Frederick, you have to read the specification," because the thing is that a lot of developers get into this habit that they just skim through the specification and they start working before they fully understand the problem that they're going to solve or exactly how it's supposed to work. And because we are programmers, details matter. Details matter a lot because the small details in programming can make a really large difference in how something behaves. So it's very important that you read the whole specification and that you follow what is said on what the client has specified, because even if you think it's wrong, it's better for you to go and check that with the client than assume things. Because in essence, if let's say that this is actually the case for a lot of businesses, now that I'm going to derail it for just a moment. The thing is that take a tattoo artist, for example. A tattoo artist, if you give a tattoo to the tattoo artist, most of them will force you to sign a contract that whatever is stated, like if you're giving them text or something, if there's a spelling error in the tattoo, that's on you. That's on you as the buyer of the tattoo to make sure that doesn't happen, because the tattoo artist cannot take the risk of making a guess, because if they guess and they have it wrong, then they are liable. It's the same thing for us developers. If you don't fully understand the specification and you build something incorrectly, if your client might actually come to you and, in a worst case scenario, pursue legal action, or you have to simply, do extra work to fix it. So my teacher said, always read the specification. And he would do something that I hated him so much for, because if I failed that test every single time. He would put a list of the specifications for the handling that we're going to do that specific week as a list basically of requirements. And what I would do was I would look at the top and I would start working. And at the bottom of that list, he would put something that I needed to know at step 1. Because if I didn't read the whole thing, I would start building the wrong thing. And he knew that. And I absolutely hated him for it. Because, as you imagine, I got to the end of that list, like at the end of the week. And I realized, shit, I have to go back now and redo this. Evil man. Genius man, but evil. And so what I'm relaying to you now is that one thing that you will start doing, trust me, you will, is that you will start learning how, or you probably already do this without thinking about it, but you will learn how to search read or skim read. When you're figuring out a problem of, you know, something, you're Googling like an issue or something that you don't really know yourself, and you go to Stack Overflow or whatever you do in order to figure out, hey, maybe there's somebody who can help me with this issue, right? The thing is that as you do that over and over and over, that becomes the default. I do this all the time. My brain just completely disconnects from my reader, like when I'm reading, and all I'm doing is that I know that I'm looking for some snippet of code that will show me how to do a specific thing, and I just skim until I find code. Usually my brain goes, if let's say it's in the context of Stack Overflow, my brain goes, okay, the title has the name of the problem that I'm looking for. Scroll down to this green check mark and look at the code. That's my entire process, for the most part. And it will be your process too. Trust me, it will. And here I am trying to tell you that it is so important that you don't do this. At least not, I'm not saying that you shouldn't do that for figuring out problems in code, but it's very important that you don't do it when you're reading specifications. Now, these subtle differences may seem trivial to you, but they will have an impact, and people will fight you for it, because, you know, if it's not the exact thing they asked for, it's not the exact thing they asked for. It doesn't matter if it's almost the same thing. I had this issue just the other day. I was implementing an email notification system basically, and in the specifications I just skimmed it, and I read, okay, if there is 40 days or less left until a certain subscription is terminated, we should send out a reminder. And then I read, and if there's just 1 week left, you should send out an email reminder as well. And my brain just clicked and said, well, if it's 40 days or less, why not just send out a email, you know, whenever there's 40 days or less left? Why make a distinction between if there's 40 days or like 40 days and a week? So I implemented the whole thing in that manner. Sat there for a week, worked, and came up to my product manager, proudly presented my work, and she said, well, this isn't the behavior that we want. And so we started talking about it, and she said that, well, you know, we have all this theory and like data and like opinions and business, like basically they had a lot of different reasons why why she and the designer wanted it to be like at a 40-day like when it's 40 days, send an email, or 1 week, send an email, otherwise don't send an email. And to me, like logically, it didn't make much sense, but that was the requirement. So it doesn't, because I didn't actually do the thing that was stated in the document, I couldn't defend myself. I had no excuse. I hadn't read the exact specification. I had done my own thing, and I got it wrong. Simple as that. So luckily for me, I could fix the problem fairly quickly. But imagine if it had been a bigger misunderstanding. And I've been there too, where I made a bigger misunderstanding. Sometimes it's even dangerous, because if you're not 100% sure what you're building, you should you have to verify it. You have to go to whoever is making, like your product manager or whoever is in charge, and make sure that you get it right, because sometimes it's actually very dangerous to get it wrong. You might have, what we call destructive operations, where if the system starts running without it working exactly as it's supposed to be working, you might find yourself losing customers or creating a situation in the system that isn't, that you can't really recover from. So here's me giving you advice that and half to you and half to myself, who's, in the future, hopefully I'll watch this video, and hopefully by then I've taken my own advice. And make sure that you read the specification. Read it and reread it. Know what you're building before you start working.